Beneath the gleaming armor and the tales of valor, the knights of the medieval era were far more than the heroes of legend we remember them to be. Imagine a world where the very symbols of honor and chivalry carried secrets so dark they could shatter the very foundations of their noble reputations. These were not just men of steel and sword, but individuals bound by ambition, betrayal, and forbidden desires. Today, we pull back the curtain on 30 of these knights, each with a story that will challenge everything you thought you knew about the age of chivalry. From treachery within the halls of Camelot to forbidden love affairs that defied kingdoms, and from occult practices hidden in the shadows to acts of unspeakable cruelty on the battlefield, these knights were as complex as they were flawed. Stay with us as we journey into the shadows of their lives, uncovering the darkest secrets that history has tried to forget. By the end of this video, you'll see these legendary figures in a whole new light, one that reveals the humanity and the darkness behind the myth. Are you ready to step into the shadows? Let's begin. Now, let us turn our gaze to the legendary halls of Camelot, where the ideals of chivalry and loyalty were put to the ultimate test. Our first knight, often overshadowed by the grandeur of King Arthur's court, is none other than Sir Mordred, the betrayer of the Round Table. While many know him as the man who brought about the fall of Camelot, few understand the tangled web of ambition, resentment, and fate that drove him to such treachery. Mordred was no ordinary knight. Born of a forbidden union between King Arthur and his half-sister Morgause, his very existence was a secret that threatened to unravel the kingdom. From the moment he entered Camelot, Mordred carried the weight of his lineage, a burden that fueled both his ambition and his bitterness. Though he was raised as a knight of the Round Table, whispers of his true parentage followed him, casting a shadow over his every achievement. But what drove Mordred to betray the very king who had welcomed him into his court? Some say it was a thirst for power, a desire to claim the throne he believed was rightfully his. Others argue it was a deep-seated resentment, born from years of feeling like an outsider in a world that celebrated unity and brotherhood. Whatever the reason, Mordred's betrayal was as calculated as it was devastating. When Arthur left Camelot to wage war against Lancelot, Mordred seized the opportunity to declare himself king. He spread lies about Arthur's death, rallying support from those who were disillusioned with the king's rule. But his reign was short-lived. Arthur returned, and the two clashed in the fateful Battle of Camlan. It was here, on that blood-soaked field, that father and son met their end, each striking the fatal blow that would seal Camelot's doom. Yet Mordred's story doesn't end with his death. Legends speak of his ghost haunting the ruins of Camelot, a spectral reminder of the betrayal that brought an era of chivalry to its knees. Some even claim that Mordred's actions were not entirely his own, but the result of a prophecy set in motion long before his birth. As we reflect on Mordred's life, we see not just a traitor, but a man shaped by the secrets and sins of those who came before him. His story forces us to question the very nature of loyalty and the price of ambition. And so, as we leave the shattered halls of Camelot behind, we carry with us the first of many dark secrets, a tale of betrayal that echoes through the ages. Next, we journey to the blood-soaked battlefields of the Crusades, where another knight's brutality would earn him a place in history and in infamy. Now, we step away from the crumbling ruins of Camelot and into the chaotic, war-torn landscapes of the Crusades. Here, amidst the clash of faiths and the roar of battle, we encounter our second knight, a figure whose name became synonymous with brutality and merciless violence. Known to history as Sir Reynold of Chatillon, this knight's actions during the Crusades would earn him both infamy and a legacy drenched in blood. The Crusades were a time of fervent religious zeal, where knights from across Europe marched to the Holy Land, driven by a mix of piety, ambition, and the promise of glory. But for Reynold, the Crusades were less about faith and more about power. A man of ruthless ambition, he saw the chaos of war as an opportunity to carve out his own kingdom, no matter the cost. Reynold's tactics were as brutal as they were effective. He was known for launching surprise attacks on caravans, villages, and even pilgrims, showing no mercy to those who stood in his way. His most infamous act was the sacking of the island of Cyprus, where he ordered the massacre of its inhabitants, leaving the land scorched and desolate. But it was his audacious raid on Mecca, a city sacred to Islam, that cemented his reputation as a bloodthirsty crusader. This act of sacrilege not only enraged the Muslim world, but also strained relations between the Crusader states and their allies. Yet, Reynold's actions were not without their defenders. Some saw him as a necessary evil, a man willing to do whatever it took to secure Christian dominance in the Holy Land. His contemporaries often justified his brutality as a response to the equally ruthless tactics of his enemies. To them, Reynold was a warrior fighting fire with fire, a man whose harsh methods were a reflection of the times he lived in. But for others, Reynold was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong with the Crusades. His disregard for diplomacy and his relentless pursuit of personal gain alienated allies and emboldened enemies. His actions ultimately contributed to the downfall of the Crusader states, as his provocations united Muslim forces under leaders like Saladin, who would go on to reclaim Jerusalem. Reynold's story is a stark reminder of the darker side of the Crusades, where the line between hero and villain was often blurred by the fog of war. His legacy forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of violence, the cost of ambition, and the ways in which history remembers its most controversial figures. As we leave the blood-soaked battlefields of the Crusades behind, we carry with us the tale of a knight whose brutality shaped the course of history, a man whose name still evokes both fear and fascination. Next, we turn to the shadowy corridors of medieval politics, where another knight's thirst for power would lead him down a path of manipulation and deceit. Now we shift our focus from the battlefields to the shadowy halls of medieval politics, where power was often wielded not with a sword but with secrets. Here we meet our third knight, a man whose name became synonymous with cunning and corruption. Known as Sir Geoffrey de Montbray, this knight-turned-baron used his influence not to protect the weak, but to exploit them, weaving a web of blackmail that ensnared nobles and commoners alike. In the turbulent world of medieval Europe, where alliances were fragile and loyalty was often for sale, Geoffrey saw an opportunity. As a baron, he held significant power, but it wasn't enough for him. He wanted more wealth, more influence, and more control. To achieve this, he turned to a weapon far more dangerous than any blade: information. Geoffrey's methods were as insidious as they were effective. He would gather secret scandals, affairs, financial misdeeds, and use them to manipulate those around him. Nobles who crossed him would suddenly find themselves facing public humiliation or worse, as Geoffrey threatened to expose their darkest deeds. Even commoners were not spared. Those who resisted his demands often found their livelihoods destroyed by rumors he spread. One of his most infamous schemes involved a rival noble family. Geoffrey discovered that the head of the family had been secretly negotiating with a foreign power, a treasonous act that could have led to their execution. Instead of reporting it, Geoffrey used the information to blackmail the noble, forcing him to cede valuable lands and resources. This pattern of manipulation allowed Geoffrey to amass a fortune and expand his influence, but it also earned him countless enemies. The political intrigue of the time played into Geoffrey's hands. With kingdoms constantly at odds and alliances shifting like sand, many were willing to overlook his actions as long as they benefited from them. But his luck would not last forever. As his schemes grew bolder, so did the risks. Eventually, one of his victims decided to fight back. A young noblewoman whose family had been ruined by Geoffrey's blackmail sought the help of a powerful bishop. Together, they gathered evidence of his crimes and presented it to the king. Geoffrey, confident in his ability to outmaneuver his enemies, underestimated the growing resentment against him. When the king ordered an investigation, Geoffrey's carefully constructed empire of secrets began to crumble. His downfall was swift and brutal. Stripped of his titles and lands, Geoffrey was imprisoned in a remote fortress where he spent the rest of his days in obscurity. His legacy, however, lived on a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of power through deceit can lead to ruin. Geoffrey's story reminds us that the medieval world was not just a stage for heroic deeds and noble quests. It was also a place where ambition could corrupt even the most powerful, and where the line between justice and vengeance was often blurred. As we leave the treacherous world of blackmail and betrayal behind, we prepare to step into a tale of forbidden love, a story that proves even the most chivalrous knights were not immune to the temptations of the heart. Now we turn from the shadowy machinations of blackmail to a story of passion and peril, a tale that reveals how even the most honorable knights could be undone by the heart. Our fourth knight, Sir Roland de Clare, was a man celebrated for his bravery and loyalty, but his legacy would forever be marked by a forbidden love that shook the foundations of his world. Sir Roland was a trusted knight in the court of a powerful duke, known for his unwavering service and chivalric ideals, but beneath his shining armor lay a secret that would soon unravel his life. He had fallen deeply in love with Lady Elena, the wife of his lord's most formidable rival, Baron Hugh de Montfort. Their love was not merely a fleeting infatuation, it was a bond that defied the rigid social and political structures of their time. The affair began innocently enough with stolen glances and whispered conversations at courtly gatherings, but as their feelings deepened, so did the risks. Elena, trapped in a loveless marriage, found solace in Roland's affection, while Roland, bound by his oath of loyalty, struggled with the moral weight of his actions. Their love was a dangerous game, one that threatened to destroy them both. The scandal erupted when a servant, hoping to curry favor with Baron Hugh, revealed the affair. The Baron, already wary of Roland's influence, was enraged. He demanded justice, accusing Roland of not only betraying his trust but also dishonoring the chivalric code. The court was thrown into chaos as whispers of the affair spread like wildfire, tarnishing Roland's once sterling reputation. The consequences were swift and severe. Roland was stripped of his knighthood and banished from the court, his name forever associated with disgrace. Elena, too, faced harsh punishment, confined to a remote convent where she spent the rest of her days in isolation. Their love, once a source of joy, became a cautionary tale of the dangers of crossing the boundaries set by medieval society. But the story of Roland and Elena is more than just a tale of scandal. It reveals the complexities of human emotion in a world governed by strict codes of conduct. Roland's fall from grace reminds us that even the most noble of knights were not immune to the temptations of the heart, and that love, in all its forms, could be both a source of great joy and profound tragedy. As we leave behind the bittersweet story of Roland and Elena, we prepare to delve into a darker chapter, one that takes us into the realm of forbidden knowledge and occult practices, where another knight's secrets would lead him down a path of no return. Now we step into a world where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural blur, where the chivalric ideals of knighthood collide with the shadowy allure of the occult. Our fifth knight, Sir Alaric of Blackwood, was a man whose name became synonymous with dark secrets and forbidden knowledge. Known for his prowess on the battlefield, Alaric's true legacy lies in his rumored descent into the arcane arts, a descent that would ultimately seal his fate. In the medieval world, superstition and fear of the unknown ran deep. The Church held immense power, and any deviation from its teachings was met with suspicion and often harsh retribution. It was in this climate of fear that Alaric began his clandestine studies. Whispers of his interest in alchemy and ancient texts first surfaced among his fellow knights, but few took them seriously. After all, Alaric was a respected warrior, a man who had proven his loyalty time and again. But as the years passed, the rumors grew louder. Alaric was said to have amassed a collection of forbidden manuscripts, some written in languages long forgotten. He was rumored to conduct strange rituals under the cover of night, seeking knowledge that was not meant for mortal men. Some claimed he sought the power to heal the sick, while others believed he was searching for immortality. Whatever his motives, Alaric's actions placed him on a dangerous path. The turning point came when a servant, terrified by what he had witnessed, reported Alaric to the local clergy. The knight was accused of consorting with dark forces, of practicing magic that defied the laws of both God and man. The church, eager to stamp out any hint of heresy, launched an investigation. Alaric's chambers were searched and the evidence was damning. Hidden among his belongings were strange symbols, potions, and books filled with incantations. Alaric's trial was swift and merciless. The court, swayed by the testimony of witnesses and the weight of the evidence, declared him guilty of sorcery. His punishment was severe, stripped of his knighthood, his lands confiscated, and his name erased from the annals of history. Some say he was burned at the stake, while others believe he was imprisoned in a remote monastery, left to rot in solitude. The story of Sir Alaric of Blackwood is a chilling reminder of the medieval world's fear of the unknown. It reflects the tension between the pursuit of knowledge and the rigid structures of faith and authority. Alaric's fall from grace serves as a cautionary tale, a warning against the dangers of delving too deeply into the mysteries that lie beyond the veil of the ordinary. As we leave the shadowy world of forbidden magic, we prepare to uncover the story of a knight whose ambition knew no bounds, a man who would stop at nothing to claim power, even if it meant betraying the very kingdom he had sworn to protect. Now we turn our attention to a knight whose ambition burned brighter than his loyalty, a man who dared to challenge the very throne he once served. Sir Godfrey of Montclair, known to history as the usurper of thrones, was a figure whose name became synonymous with betrayal and political upheaval. His story is one of cunning, ambition, and the high cost of power. In the turbulent years of the early 13th century, the kingdom of Eldoria was a land rife with political intrigue. The aging King Aldric, once a formidable ruler, had grown weak and indecisive, leaving the realm vulnerable to internal strife. It was in this climate of uncertainty that Sir Godfrey, a knight of noble birth and sharp intellect, saw an opportunity to rise above his station. Godfrey's motivations were as complex as they were ruthless. While some claimed he sought to restore order to a fractured kingdom, others whispered that his true aim was personal glory. What is certain is that Godfrey was a master manipulator, skilled in the art of persuasion and deception. He began by forging alliances with disgruntled nobles, promising them wealth and influence in exchange for their support. Slowly but surely, he built a network of loyalists who shared his vision, or at least his hunger for power. The final blow came during a grand feast held in the king's honor. Under the guise of celebrating the kingdom's prosperity, Godfrey and his allies launched a coup. The king's guards, many of whom had been bribed or threatened, offered little resistance. By dawn, King Aldric was imprisoned, and Godfrey declared himself the new ruler of Eldoria. The swiftness of his rise to power stunned the kingdom, leaving many to wonder how such a betrayal could have gone unnoticed. But Godfrey's reign was far from secure. The nobles who had supported him soon grew wary of his growing authority, and whispers of rebellion began to spread. Meanwhile, the common folk who had once hoped for stability under a new ruler found themselves burdened by heavy taxes and harsh laws. Godfrey's attempts to consolidate power only deepened the divisions within the kingdom, setting the stage for further conflict. In the end, Godfrey's ambition proved to be his undoing. Just 5 years after seizing the throne, he was overthrown by a coalition of nobles and knights who had grown tired of his tyranny. Stripped of his crown and his dignity, Godfrey spent his final days in exile, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition. The story of Sir Godfrey of Montclair is a stark reminder of the fragile nature of power and the consequences of betrayal. His actions reshaped the future of Eldoria, leaving a legacy of mistrust and instability that would linger for generations. As we move forward, we prepare to uncover the tale of a knight whose loyalty was not to a king or a kingdom, but to the highest bidder, a man who abandoned his oath for the promise of gold and glory. From the ashes of betrayal and ambition, we now step into the shadowy world of a knight who traded honor for gold, a man who chose profit over loyalty. Meet Sir Roland of Blackwood, a knight whose name became synonymous with the life of a mercenary turncoat. His story is one of moral compromise, shifting allegiances, and the high price of forsaking one's vows. Born into a noble family, Roland was raised with the ideals of chivalry and duty. Yet, as he grew older, he found himself disillusioned by the rigid structures of knighthood. The constant wars, the endless feuds between lords, and the heavy expectations placed upon him began to weigh heavily on his conscience. It was during a particularly brutal campaign that Roland made a fateful decision, one that would change the course of his life forever. Disenchanted with the cause he was fighting for, Roland abandoned his post and offered his sword to the highest bidder. As a mercenary, he fought in countless battles, switching sides as often as the wind changed direction. His skill with a blade and his tactical brilliance made him a valuable asset, but his lack of loyalty earned him the scorn of his former comrades. To them, Roland was no longer a knight, he was a sellsword, a man who had traded his honor for coin. The moral dilemmas Roland faced were as complex as the battles he fought. On one hand, he justified his actions by claiming he was free from the constraints of feudal loyalty, able to choose his own path. On the other, he struggled with the knowledge that his decisions often led to the deaths of men he once called brothers. The weight of his choices haunted him, even as he amassed wealth and renown on the battlefield. One of the most infamous moments in Roland's career came during the siege of Viamont. Hired by a rival lord to undermine his former allies, Roland led a daring night raid that turned the tide of the battle. His actions secured victory for his employer, but left his former comrades slaughtered and betrayed. The aftermath of the siege marked a turning point in Roland's life. While his employer praised him as a hero, whispers of his treachery spread like wildfire, tarnishing his reputation beyond repair. Despite his success, Roland's peers viewed him with a mix of admiration and disdain. Some envied his freedom and wealth, while others saw him as a cautionary tale, a man who had lost his way. Even those who hired him did so with caution, knowing that his loyalty could be bought and sold like any other commodity. In the end, Roland's life as a mercenary left him isolated, a man without a true home or cause. The story of Sir Roland of Blackwood serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of abandoning one's principles. His journey from knight to mercenary reveals the fragile nature of honor and the high cost of forsaking one's vows. As we continue our exploration of medieval knights and their darkest secrets, we turn next to a tale of poison, power, and the deadly game of courtly intrigue. From the battlefield to the shadowy corridors of power, we now delve into the chilling tale of a knight who wielded poison as his weapon of choice. Meet Sir Alaric of Montclair, a man whose name became synonymous with treachery and cunning. Unlike the knights who fought openly with sword and shield, Alaric operated in the shadows, using poison to eliminate his enemies and reshape the political landscape of his time. Born into a family of minor nobility, Alaric was known for his sharp intellect and ambition. While other knights sought glory in combat, Alaric saw power as a game of strategy and manipulation. His rise to prominence began when he was appointed as a trusted advisor to a powerful duke. It was here that Alaric first discovered the deadly potential of poison, a tool that allowed him to eliminate rivals without drawing blood or raising suspicion. Alaric's methods were as calculated as they were ruthless. He often used rare and untraceable toxins, some of which he acquired from distant lands through his network of spies and merchants. One of his most infamous acts was the poisoning of a rival lord during a grand feast. The lord's sudden death was attributed to natural causes, and Alaric's role in the murder remained hidden for a time. As his reputation for cunning grew, so did his list of enemies. Alaric's most audacious act came when he targeted a king who had begun to suspect his involvement in a series of mysterious deaths. Using a poisoned chalice, Alaric attempted to eliminate the monarch during a private audience. However, the king's taster, a loyal servant, fell victim to the toxin instead. This near miss sparked a full-scale investigation, and Alaric's web of deceit began to unravel. The political fallout from Alaric's actions was immense. His betrayal shook the court to its core, leading to widespread paranoia and mistrust among the nobility. The king, determined to root out the traitor, ordered a thorough inquiry. Alaric's network of allies and informants was dismantled one by one, and the evidence against him became impossible to ignore. Alaric's downfall came when one of his former accomplices, fearing for their own life, revealed his secrets to the king. Arrested and brought to trial, Alaric faced charges of treason and murder. Despite his attempts to manipulate the court, the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to death, and his execution became a grim spectacle, serving as a warning to others who might consider following in his footsteps. The story of Sir Alaric of Montclair is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the lengths to which some will go to seize power. His use of poison as a weapon of political intrigue reveals the darker side of medieval courtly life, where loyalty was often a facade and betrayal lurked behind every corner. As we continue our journey through the darkest secrets of medieval knights, we turn next to a tale of forbidden love and the scandal that shook a kingdom. Now, let us step into the shadows of faith and rebellion, where the line between devotion and heresy blurs. Our next knight, Sir Godfrey of Artois, carried a secret that could have cost him everything: his life, his honor, and his soul. Unlike the knights who openly pledged their loyalty to the church, Godfrey harbored beliefs that defied the religious orthodoxy of his time. In an era where heresy was punishable by death, his story is one of courage, deception, and ultimate tragedy. Godfrey was born into a devoutly Catholic family, raised to uphold the teachings of the church. Yet, as he grew older, he began to question the rigid doctrines imposed by the clergy. Through his travels and encounters with scholars, he was exposed to heretical ideas, including the teachings of the Cathars, a sect that rejected the authority of the church and preached a simpler, more spiritual form of Christianity. These ideas resonated deeply with Godfrey, and he secretly embraced them, knowing full well the dangers of doing so. To protect himself, Godfrey became a master of disguise, not in the literal sense, but in the way he lived his life. Publicly, he remained a loyal knight, attending Mass, donating to the church, and even participating in crusades against heretics. Privately, however, he practiced his forbidden beliefs, gathering with like-minded individuals in hidden locations to discuss their faith. He took great care to cover his tracks, using coded messages and trusted intermediaries to communicate with fellow heretics. For years, his double life went undetected, a testament to his cunning and discipline. But secrets have a way of unraveling. Godfrey's downfall began when a fellow knight, suspicious of his late-night absences, began to spy on him. This knight discovered Godfrey's involvement with a secret Cathar gathering and reported him to the local bishop. The church, ever vigilant against heresy, launched an investigation. Godfrey was arrested and brought before an inquisitor, where he faced intense questioning and the threat of torture. Despite the pressure, Godfrey refused to renounce his beliefs. His trial became a spectacle, drawing crowds of onlookers who were both fascinated and horrified by his defiance. The church, eager to make an example of him, sentenced Godfrey to death by burning at the stake. His execution was a grim reminder of the consequences of challenging religious authority in medieval Europe. The story of Sir Godfrey of Artois is a poignant exploration of faith, identity, and the cost of dissent. His life reveals the lengths to which individuals went to hold onto their beliefs in the face of persecution, as well as the brutal measures taken by the Church to maintain its power. As we continue our journey through the darkest secrets of medieval knights, we turn next to a tale of greed and sacrilege, a knight who plundered the sacred for personal gain. Now we shift our focus to a knight whose actions blurred the line between ambition and sacrilege. Sir Roland de Montfort, known as the plunderer of monasteries, stands as a stark reminder of how greed could corrupt even the most noble of titles. In a time when monasteries were seen as sacred sanctuaries, Roland saw them as treasure troves ripe for the taking. His story is one of ruthless ambition, moral compromise, and the dark allure of wealth. Roland was born into a family of modest means, but he dreamed of power and prestige. In a world where land and wealth determined one's standing, he saw monasteries as untapped sources of riches. These religious institutions, often isolated and poorly defended, housed gold, relics, and vast stores of grain prizes that could elevate a knight's status overnight. Roland justified his raids by claiming that the Church had grown too wealthy and corrupt, hoarding resources that could be better used to fund wars or aid the poor. Yet, beneath this veneer of righteousness lay a hunger for personal gain. The historical context of such raids cannot be ignored. During the medieval period, monasteries were not only spiritual centers but also economic powerhouses. They owned vast tracts of land, collected tithes, and amassed wealth through donations. For knights like Roland, who lacked the resources to maintain their status, raiding these institutions became a tempting shortcut to power. However, the moral implications were severe. Attacking a monastery was not just a crime against the Church, it was seen as an affront to God himself. Those who carried out such acts risked eternal damnation, a price Roland seemed willing to pay. Roland's methods were as cunning as they were brutal. He would often disguise his men as pilgrims or merchants to gain entry to monasteries, only to reveal their true intentions once inside. His raids were swift and merciless, leaving behind smoldering ruins and terrified monks. Yet he was careful to avoid outright sacrilege, such as desecrating altars or harming clergy, as even he understood the limits of what his peers would tolerate. This calculated approach allowed him to amass a fortune without facing immediate retribution. But Roland's luck would not last forever. His downfall came when he targeted a monastery under the protection of a powerful noble. The noble, outraged by the attack, rallied his forces and hunted Roland down. Captured and brought to trial, Roland faced charges of heresy and sacrilege. Despite his attempts to justify his actions, he was sentenced to death, his wealth confiscated, and his name forever tarnished. The story of Sir Roland de Montfort forces us to confront the moral complexities of medieval ambition. His actions reveal the lengths to which individuals would go to secure power, even at the cost of their souls. As we move forward, we turn to a knight whose secrets were so well hidden that they only came to light after his death, a tale of disgrace that echoes through the ages. Now we delve into the shadowy tale of Sir Geoffrey of Ashbury, a knight whose cunning deception shocked the medieval world. Known as the knight who faked his death, Geoffrey's story is one of desperation, ingenuity, and the lengths one might go to escape the chains of duty or the wrath of powerful enemies. His elaborate ruse not only fooled his contemporaries but also left a legacy of intrigue that continues to captivate historians and storytellers alike. Geoffrey's decision to stage his own death was born out of a perfect storm of personal and political pressures. As a vassal to a notoriously ruthless lord, Geoffrey found himself trapped in a web of escalating demands and dangerous alliances. His lord's insatiable appetite for power had led to a series of ill-fated campaigns, leaving Geoffrey disillusioned and fearing for his life. To make matters worse, he had incurred the wrath of a rival noble after a bitter feud over land and honor. With enemies closing in on all sides, Geoffrey saw no way out except to disappear entirely. The plan was as daring as it was meticulous. Geoffrey chose the chaos of battle as the stage for his deception. During a skirmish with a rival faction, he orchestrated a seemingly fatal fall from his horse, ensuring that his body would be lost in the confusion of the battlefield. To sell the illusion, he enlisted the help of a trusted squire who planted Geoffrey's bloodied armor and sword near the body of a fallen soldier. The squire then spread the word of Geoffrey's heroic demise, a tale that quickly gained traction among the ranks. By the time the dust settled, Geoffrey was presumed dead, and his enemies turned their attention elsewhere. For years, Geoffrey lived in obscurity, adopting a new identity as a wandering hermit. He traveled far from his former lands, avoiding towns and villages where he might be recognized. Yet, even in exile, he could not escape the weight of his past. Rumors began to circulate of a mysterious figure who bore a striking resemblance to the fallen knight. These whispers eventually reached the ears of his former lord, who, suspicious of the truth, launched an investigation. Geoffrey's ruse unraveled when a former comrade recognized him during a chance encounter at a remote monastery. Confronted with the evidence of his deception, Geoffrey had no choice but to confess. His former lord, furious at the betrayal, ordered his arrest. Geoffrey's fate was sealed, but his story did not end there. In a twist of irony, his tale of survival and cunning earned him a strange kind of admiration among the common folk, who saw him as a symbol of resistance against oppressive rulers. The story of Sir Geoffrey of Ashbury forces us to question the boundaries of loyalty and survival. Was his deception an act of cowardice or a desperate bid for freedom? His legacy reminds us that even in a world bound by oaths and honor, the human instinct to survive can lead to extraordinary choices. As we move forward, we turn to a knight whose secrets were so well hidden that they only came to light after his death, a tale of disgrace that echoes through the ages. Now, we turn our attention to a knight whose story is a chilling reminder that even the most celebrated heroes can hide the darkest of secrets. Sir Roland of Montclair, known as the traitorous champion, was a man whose valor on the battlefield earned him the admiration of his kingdom, but behind his gleaming armor lay a heart of treachery. Roland's rise to fame began during the War of the Twin Crowns, a brutal conflict that pitted two rival kingdoms against each other. His unmatched skill with a sword and his fearless leadership in battle quickly made him a legend among his peers. Songs were sung of his bravery, and nobles vied for his favor. Yet, beneath the surface of this celebrated champion, a dangerous secret festered. Roland had been secretly working for the enemy, feeding them critical information about his own kingdom's strategies and movements. The reasons for Roland's betrayal were as complex as they were tragic. Years earlier, his family had been wronged by the very kingdom he now served. A bitter dispute over land and honor had left his father disgraced and his family's name tarnished. Consumed by a desire for revenge, Roland saw an opportunity to strike back by aiding the enemy. His double life began subtly, with small acts of sabotage that went unnoticed. But as the war dragged on, his actions grew bolder and the consequences more devastating. One of the most pivotal moments came during the Battle of Blackwood Pass. Roland, leading a contingent of his kingdom's finest knights, deliberately led them into a trap. The ambush was catastrophic, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of loyal soldiers and a crushing defeat for his side. Yet, Roland's reputation as a hero shielded him from suspicion. He was hailed as a valiant leader who had fought against impossible odds, and his role in the disaster was never questioned, at least not at first. The unraveling of Roland's betrayal began with a single, careless mistake. During a secret meeting with his enemy handlers, he was spotted by a lowly squire who had once served under him. The squire, though loyal to Roland, was troubled by what he had seen and confided in a trusted friend. Word eventually reached the ears of the kingdom's spymaster, who launched a discreet investigation. The evidence against Roland mounted slowly but surely. Discrepancies in battle reports, intercepted messages, and the testimony of captured enemy soldiers all pointed to his guilt. Yet it was a letter written in Roland's own hand and discovered in the possession of an enemy commander that sealed his fate. The letter detailed plans for an upcoming assault, including the exact location of his kingdom's forces. When confronted with the evidence, Roland initially denied everything, but the weight of the proof was undeniable. Roland's trial was a spectacle that shook the kingdom to its core. The man who had once been their greatest champion now stood accused of the gravest betrayal. His motives were laid bare, and the full extent of his treachery was revealed. In the end, Roland was stripped of his titles and executed, his name forever tarnished by his actions. The story of Sir Roland of Montclair serves as a stark reminder that even the brightest stars can harbor the darkest shadows. His betrayal forces us to question the nature of loyalty and the lengths to which personal grievances can drive a person. As we continue our journey through the secrets of medieval knights, we next uncover the tale of a knight who made a pact with dark forces, a story that blurs the line between legend and reality. Now we delve into a tale that blurs the line between history and myth, a story steeped in the supernatural and the macabre. Sir Alaric of Blackthorn, known as the knight who sold his soul, is a figure whose name evokes both awe and dread. His legend speaks of a man so desperate for power and victory that he was willing to make a pact with forces beyond the mortal realm. Alaric's story begins in a time of great turmoil when his kingdom was on the brink of collapse. Besieged by enemies and plagued by internal strife, the land seemed destined for ruin. Alaric, a knight of noble birth but limited influence, saw an opportunity to rise above his station. Driven by ambition and a desire to save his homeland, he sought out forbidden knowledge, venturing into the shadowy corners of the world where dark forces were said to dwell. According to legend, Alaric made his pact in the depths of an ancient forest where he encountered a mysterious figure cloaked in darkness. The entity offered him unparalleled strength and victory in battle, but at a terrible cost his soul. Desperate and convinced that the ends justified the means, Alaric agreed. From that moment on, his fortunes changed. He became an unstoppable force on the battlefield, his sword striking with inhuman precision and his presence striking fear into the hearts of his enemies. Yet, as the tales go, the price of his power soon became apparent. Alaric's victories were tainted by strange occurrences. Soldiers whispered of unnatural storms that followed him into battle, of enemies who seemed to die not by his blade but by some unseen force. His once noble demeanor grew cold and distant, and his eyes, it was said, glowed with an otherworldly light. The very land around him seemed to wither as if cursed by his presence. The consequences of Alaric's pact extended beyond the battlefield. His relationships crumbled as friends and allies grew wary of the man he had become. Even his closest confidants could not ignore the sense of dread that surrounded him. The kingdom he had sought to save began to fear him more than the enemies he fought. His victories, though numerous, came at a cost that no one could have foreseen. The turning point came during the siege of Ravenspire, a battle that would define Alaric's legacy. As he led his forces against the enemy, the dark forces he had bargained with demanded their due. In the heat of battle, Alaric was struck down not by an enemy's blade but by the very power he had wielded. His body was found lifeless, his face frozen in an expression of terror. The enemy, though defeated, claimed that they had not been his true adversaries. It was the darkness within him that had sealed his fate. Alaric's story became a cautionary tale, a warning against the dangers of unchecked ambition and the allure of forbidden power. Folklore surrounding his pact with dark forces spread far and wide, with many variations of the tale emerging over the centuries. Some say his soul was claimed by the entity he bargained with, while others believe he wanders the earth as a restless spirit, forever bound by the consequences of his choice. As we reflect on the tale of Sir Alaric of Blackthorn, we are reminded of the timeless lesson that power, when sought at any cost, can lead to ruin. His story serves as a haunting reminder of the price one might pay for tampering with forces beyond human understanding. And now, as we continue our journey through the shadows of medieval chivalry, we turn to the story of a knight whose greed led him to plunder the sacred, a tale that challenges our understanding of honor and morality. Now we turn to a tale of betrayal that cuts deeper than any blade, a story of ambition so ruthless that it turned a knight against his own blood. Sir Godfrey of Harrowmont, known as the Murderous Heir, was a man whose hunger for power led him down a path of unspeakable cruelty. His story is one of greed, manipulation, and the devastating consequences of placing ambition above all else. Godfrey was born into a noble family, the second son of a powerful lord. While his elder brother, Edwin, was groomed to inherit the family's lands and titles, Godfrey grew up in the shadow of his sibling, resentful of his perceived inferiority. As the years passed, this resentment festered into a burning desire to claim what he believed was rightfully his. But with Edwin standing firmly in his way, Godfrey knew that achieving his goals would require more than patience. It would demand drastic action. The first signs of Godfrey's treachery came when their father fell ill. As the Lord's health declined, Godfrey began to manipulate those around him, sowing discord within the family and undermining Edwin's authority. He whispered lies to his father, suggesting that Edwin was unfit to rule and that the family's legacy would crumble under his leadership. When these efforts failed to dislodge his brother, Godfrey's schemes grew darker. One fateful night, during a feast to celebrate Edwin's impending ascension to lordship, tragedy struck. Edwin was found dead in his chambers, his body bearing the marks of a violent struggle. The family was thrown into chaos and suspicion immediately fell on Godfrey. Yet, with no concrete evidence and his father too grief-stricken to investigate thoroughly, Godfrey managed to evade blame. In the wake of Edwin's death, he positioned himself as the natural successor, claiming that he alone could restore stability to their lands. But Godfrey's ambition did not stop there. With his father's health continuing to deteriorate, he grew impatient. Fearing that his father might name another heir or recover enough to see through his manipulations, Godfrey took matters into his own hands. Under the guise of administering medicine, he poisoned his father, ensuring that the path to power was clear. With both his brother and father gone, Godfrey seized control of the family's estates, presenting himself as the rightful lord. For a time, it seemed that Godfrey had succeeded in his ruthless quest. He ruled with an iron fist, crushing dissent and consolidating his power. Yet, the truth of his actions could not remain hidden forever. Whispers of his crimes began to spread, fueled by those who had witnessed his manipulations and the strange circumstances surrounding the deaths of his family members. A loyal servant who had overheard Godfrey's plans finally came forward, revealing the full extent of his treachery. The revelation sent shockwaves through the kingdom. Godfrey was arrested and brought before a council of nobles where the evidence against him was laid bare. Despite his attempts to deny the accusations, the weight of the testimony was too great to ignore. He was stripped of his titles, his lands confiscated, and sentenced to a fate befitting his crime's execution by beheading. Godfrey's story serves as a grim reminder of the destructive power of unchecked ambition. His actions not only destroyed his family but also left a lasting stain on their legacy. The tale of the murderous heir is one of betrayal, greed, and the high price of power, a cautionary lesson that echoes through the ages. And as we continue our journey through the shadows of medieval chivalry, we turn next to a knight whose defiance of his oath would challenge the very foundations of honor and duty. Now we shift our focus to a knight whose story challenges the very essence of chivalry, a man who turned his back on the sacred vows he once swore to uphold. Sir Roland of Blackwood, known as the knight who abandoned his oath, was a figure whose choices would forever tarnish his name and redefine the meaning of honor in the medieval world. Roland began his journey as a shining example of knighthood. Born into a modest family, he rose through the ranks by proving his valor on the battlefield and earning the trust of his lord. His dedication to the code of chivalry was unwavering, and for years he served with distinction, earning the respect of his peers and the admiration of those he protected. But beneath the surface of this noble facade, a storm was brewing, a growing dissatisfaction with the constraints of his oath. The turning point came during a campaign against a rival kingdom. Roland, tasked with leading a contingent of knights, found himself facing a moral dilemma. His lord had ordered the destruction of a village suspected of harboring enemy sympathizers. Roland, however, knew the villagers were innocent, hardworking families caught in the crossfire of a war they had no part in. Torn between his duty to obey and his conscience, Roland made a fateful decision. He refused the order, choosing instead to spare the village and lead his men away. This act of defiance marked the beginning of Roland's downfall. His lord, furious at the insubordination, stripped him of his command and publicly denounced him as a traitor. Roland's reputation, once unblemished, was now in tatters, but rather than seeking redemption, Roland embraced his newfound freedom. He renounced his vows of chivalry, declaring that the code he had once revered was nothing more than a tool for the powerful to control the weak. Free from the constraints of his oath, Roland turned to a life of mercenary work, selling his sword to the highest bidder. He fought in countless battles, amassing wealth and influence, but at a great cost. His former comrades viewed him with disdain, branding him a deserter and a coward. The common folk who had once looked to him as a protector now saw him as a symbol of betrayal. Even those who hired him did so with reluctance, knowing that a man who had abandoned his oath could not be trusted. Roland's story raises profound questions about the nature of honor and duty. Was he a traitor or a man who dared to defy an unjust system? His decision to abandon his oath was born of both disillusionment and self-interest, a complex mix of idealism and ambition. While some saw him as a hero who stood up for what he believed was right, others viewed him as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of forsaking one's principles. As we reflect on Roland's legacy, we are reminded that the path of a knight was never as clear-cut as the legends suggest. The choices they faced were often fraught with moral ambiguity, and the consequences of those choices could ripple through history. And now, as we continue our journey through the shadows of medieval chivalry, we turn to a knight whose actions would blur the line between loyalty and treachery even further. Now we delve into the shadowy world of medieval espionage, where loyalty was a mask and secrets were the currency of power. Meet Sir Geoffrey of Ashbury, a knight whose double life as a spy would forever alter the fate of his kingdom. Known as the spy in the court, Geoffrey's story is one of cunning, deception, and the high stakes of betrayal. Geoffrey's rise to prominence began in the court of King Edward, where his charm and wit earned him the trust of the nobility. He was a master of diplomacy, skilled in navigating the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that defined medieval politics. But beneath his polished exterior lay a dangerous secret. Geoffrey was secretly in the employ of a rival kingdom, tasked with gathering intelligence to undermine King Edward's reign. The espionage tactics of the time were as ingenious as they were ruthless. Geoffrey relied on coded messages, hidden compartments in his armor, and a network of informants to relay sensitive information. He would often attend feasts and gatherings, using his position to eavesdrop on conversations and extract valuable details about military strategies, political alliances, and the king's plans. His ability to blend in and gain the confidence of those around him made him an exceptionally effective spy. For years, Geoffrey's double life went undetected. He played his role so convincingly that even those closest to him had no inkling of his true allegiance. But as the stakes grew higher, so did the risks. One fateful night, Geoffrey's luck ran out. A servant, suspicious of his late-night activities, discovered a hidden compartment in his quarters containing incriminating documents. The evidence was undeniable. Geoffrey had been passing secrets to the enemy. The revelation sent shockwaves through the court. King Edward, once a staunch supporter of Geoffrey, felt the sting of betrayal deeply. Geoffrey was arrested and brought before the king, where he was given a chance to explain himself. In a moment of rare candor, Geoffrey confessed, revealing the pressures and promises that had led him down this treacherous path. He spoke of the rival kingdoms' promises of wealth and power, and the moral compromises he had made in pursuit of his own ambitions. Geoffrey's betrayal was met with swift and severe punishment. Stripped of his knighthood and titles, he was sentenced to life imprisonment in the darkest dungeon of the castle. His name became synonymous with treachery, a cautionary tale of the dangers of greed and deceit. Yet, his story also sheds light on the complexities of loyalty and the lengths to which individuals would go to secure their own interests in a world where power was everything. As we reflect on Geoffrey's tale, we are reminded that the medieval court was not just a stage for chivalry and honor, but also a battleground for secrets and subterfuge. The line between friend and foe was often blurred, and the consequences of betrayal could reshape the course of history. And now, as we continue our exploration of the darkest secrets of medieval knights, we turn to a figure whose actions would blur the line between loyalty and treachery even further. Shifting our focus to a tale of sacrilege and ambition, we now uncover the story of Sir Roland de Montfort, a knight whose greed led him to commit one of the most audacious crimes of the medieval era, the theft of a sacred relic. Known as the knight who stole a relic, Roland's actions would not only tarnish his name but also ignite a firestorm of political and religious consequences. The relic in question was the Shroud of St. Aldrich, a revered artifact believed to possess miraculous powers. Kept in the Grand Cathedral of Rouen, the shroud was a symbol of divine protection and a source of immense pride for the local clergy and nobility. Pilgrims from across Europe traveled to Rouen to pay homage to the relic, making it a cornerstone of the region's spiritual and economic life. For Roland, however, the shroud represented something far more tangible, an opportunity for personal gain. Roland, a knight of considerable skill but questionable morals, had long harbored ambitions of rising above his station. When whispers of the shroud's value reached his ears, he saw a chance to secure wealth and influence. Under the cover of darkness, Roland infiltrated the cathedral, bypassing its guards and intricate security measures with surprising ease. He made off with the shroud, leaving behind a scene of chaos and disbelief. The theft sent shockwaves through the kingdom. The clergy declared the act a sacrilege, while the nobility viewed it as a direct challenge to their authority. The shroud's absence was seen as a bad omen, and its loss plunged the region into a state of fear and uncertainty. Roland, meanwhile, attempted to leverage the relic for his own benefit, offering it to the highest bidder among rival factions. His actions revealed a man driven by ambition, willing to exploit even the most sacred of objects for personal gain. The consequences of Roland's theft were swift and severe. The church launched a relentless campaign to recover the shroud, enlisting the help of knights, mercenaries, and even spies. Roland's betrayal of both his faith and his fellow knights made him a pariah, hunted by those who once called him brother. His attempts to sell the relic only deepened his infamy as word of his crime spread far and wide. When Roland was finally captured, his trial was a spectacle of medieval justice. Stripped of his armor and titles, he was forced to confront the full weight of his actions. The shroud was returned to the cathedral, but the damage had been done. Roland's name became synonymous with greed and sacrilege, a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition. His legacy serves as a stark reminder that even the most sacred of objects can become tools of corruption in the wrong hands. As we reflect on Roland's story, we are reminded of the delicate balance between faith and power in the medieval world. The theft of the Shroud of St. Aldrich was not just a crime against the church, it was a betrayal of the very ideals that knights like Roland were sworn to uphold. And now, as we continue our journey through the darkest secrets of medieval knights, we turn to a figure whose actions would blur the line between loyalty and treachery even further. Turning now to a tale of loyalty shattered and oaths broken, we delve into the story of Sir Geoffrey of Clairvaux, a knight whose betrayal of his own order would send ripples through the medieval world. Known as the knight who betrayed his order, Geoffrey's actions would not only destroy his reputation but also threaten the very foundation of the brotherhood he once swore to protect. Geoffrey was a member of the Knights Hospitaller, an order renowned for its dedication to aiding the sick and defending the faith. Rising through the ranks, he earned a reputation as a skilled warrior and a devout servant of the order's mission. Yet beneath his outward piety lay a growing discontent. Geoffrey chafed under the strict discipline of the Hospitallers, feeling that his talents were undervalued and his ambitions stifled. This simmering resentment would eventually boil over into outright betrayal. The catalyst for Geoffrey's treachery came in the form of a rival faction within the Order, a group of knights who sought to challenge the leadership and reshape the Hospitallers' priorities. Secretly, Geoffrey aligned himself with these dissidents, sharing sensitive information and plotting to undermine the Order's hierarchy. His betrayal was not born of malice but of a misguided belief that he could reform the Hospitallers from within, even if it meant tearing them apart in the process. When Geoffrey's actions were discovered, the fallout was immediate and devastating. The Order, already strained by internal divisions, was thrown into chaos. Trust among the knights eroded, and the once unified brotherhood fractured into factions. Geoffrey's betrayal was seen as a profound violation of the sacred oaths he had taken, and his name became synonymous with treachery. The leadership of the Hospitallers, determined to restore order, moved swiftly to punish him. Geoffrey's trial was a somber affair held within the walls of the Order's fortress. Stripped of his armor and insignia, he stood before his former comrades, forced to confront the consequences of his actions. The punishment was severe. Geoffrey was excommunicated from the Order and banished from its lands. His name was struck from the records, and his deeds were condemned as a warning to others who might consider betraying their vows. Yet Geoffrey's story does not end there. In the years that followed, he wandered as an outcast, haunted by the choices he had made. Some say he sought redemption, while others claim he continued to sow discord wherever he went. Whatever the truth, his legacy serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of loyalty and the high cost of betrayal. As we reflect on Geoffrey's fall from grace, we are reminded of the weight of the oaths sworn by medieval knights and the profound consequences of breaking them. His story is a cautionary tale, one that underscores the importance of integrity and the dangers of placing personal ambition above the bonds of brotherhood. And now, as we continue our exploration of the darkest secrets of medieval knights, we turn to a figure whose actions would blur the line between heroism and villainy even further. Now we shift our focus to a knight whose story blurs the lines between loyalty and survival, a man who made the unthinkable choice to fight for the enemy. This is the tale of Sir Alaric of Montreux, a knight whose defection to an opposing kingdom would leave a lasting mark on the pages of history. Known as the knight who fought for the enemy, Alaric's actions would challenge the very ideals of chivalry and loyalty that defined his era. Alaric began his career as a trusted vassal of the Kingdom of Arles, serving with distinction in numerous campaigns. His skill with a blade and his strategic mind earned him the respect of his peers and the favor of his king. Yet, as the tides of war turned against Arles, Alaric found himself facing a dilemma that would test his principles to their core. The kingdom was besieged on multiple fronts, its resources dwindling and its armies stretched thin. Amidst the chaos, Alaric was captured during a skirmish by the forces of the rival kingdom of Lorraine. What followed was a turning point that would define Alaric's legacy. Rather than facing execution or imprisonment, he was offered a choice by the enemy commander: swear allegiance to Lorraine and fight for their cause or perish. For Alaric, the decision was not made lightly. He weighed his loyalty to Arles against the grim reality of his situation. In the end, survival and the promise of a new beginning led him to defect, a choice that would brand him a traitor in the eyes of his former comrade. Alaric's defection was met with outrage in Arles. His former king declared him a coward and a turncoat, stripping him of his titles and lands. Yet, in Lorraine, Alaric was given a chance to prove himself anew. He fought valiantly in several key battles, his knowledge of Arles' strategies proving invaluable to his new masters. His actions on the battlefield earned him a reputation as a formidable warrior, but also as a man without honor, a knight who had abandoned his sworn allegiance. The reactions to Alaric's defection were starkly divided. In Arles, he was vilified, his name spoken with contempt and his deeds used as a cautionary tale. In Lorraine, however, he was celebrated as a hero, a symbol of the kingdom's ability to turn even its enemies into allies. This duality in perception highlights the complex nature of loyalty in a time when survival often took precedence over ideals. As the war dragged on, Alaric's internal struggle grew. He was haunted by the betrayal of his former kingdom, yet driven by the need to prove his worth to his new one. His story raises profound questions about the nature of honor and the choices faced by those caught in the crossfire of war. Was Alaric a traitor, or simply a man trying to survive in a world that offered him no easy path? In the end, Alaric's fate remains shrouded in mystery. Some accounts claim he died in battle, fighting for the kingdom he had once opposed. Others suggest he disappeared into obscurity, seeking redemption for the choices he had made. Whatever the truth, his story serves as a powerful reminder of the moral complexities faced by medieval knights and the heavy price of loyalty or the lack thereof. As we leave Alaric's tale behind, we prepare to uncover yet another dark secret from the annals of knighthood, one that involves forbidden alliances and the shadowy world of witchcraft. The next chapter in our journey promises to reveal a knight whose actions would defy the very fabric of medieval society. Now we step into a world where the boundaries between chivalry and the occult blur, a tale that takes us deep into the shadows of medieval superstition. This is the story of Sir Godfrey of Blackwood, a knight whose desperate ambition led him to form an unthinkable alliance with those feared and reviled by society witches. Known as the knight who conspired with witches, Godfrey's actions would challenge the very foundations of medieval morality and leave a stain on his legacy that time could not erase. Godfrey was once a respected knight in the service of the Duke of Burgundy, known for his bravery and tactical brilliance, but as the years passed, his ambitions grew and so did his frustration. Despite his achievements, he found himself overlooked for higher honors, his dreams of power slipping further from his grasp. It was in this state of desperation that Godfrey turned to the forbidden, seeking aid from those who dwelled on the fringes of society. Witches, whose knowledge of the arcane was both feared and whispered about in hushed tones. The superstitions of the time painted witches as agents of chaos, practitioners of dark magic who could curse enemies, summon storms, and even control the minds of men. To ally with them was to risk not only one's reputation but one's soul. Yet, for Godfrey, the promise of power outweighed the dangers. He sought out a coven rumored to reside deep within the Black Forest, a place where few dared to venture. There he struck a bargain with the witches, offering them protection and resources in exchange for their aid in his rise to power. The alliance was a dangerous one, built on mutual need and mistrust. The witches provided Godfrey with potions and charms, whispered secrets of his enemies, and even cast spells to sway the outcomes of battles. In return, Godfrey shielded them from persecution, using his influence to keep the church and local authorities at bay. For a time, the arrangement worked and Godfrey's star began to rise. He won battles, gained favor, and even secured a position of influence within the Duke's court. But the cost of his success was steep, and the whispers of his dealings with witches began to spread. The nature of Godfrey's alliance with the witches was as complex as it was perilous. While he saw them as tools to achieve his goals, the witches viewed him as a pawn in their own schemes. They manipulated him, feeding him half-truths and using his growing paranoia to their advantage. As Godfrey's power grew, so did his dependence on their dark arts, and with it, his isolation from those who once respected him. His fellow knights began to suspect his methods, and the church, ever vigilant against heresy, started to take notice. The end of Godfrey's alliance with the witches came swiftly and violently. When the Duke's court was struck by a mysterious illness, rumors of witchcraft spread like wildfire. Godfrey's enemies seized the opportunity, accusing him of conspiring with the witches to bring about the plague. A trial was held, and though Godfrey denied the charges, the evidence against him was damning. The witches, fearing for their own lives, turned on him, revealing the extent of their dealings in a desperate bid to save themselves. Godfrey was stripped of his titles, his lands confiscated, and his name forever tarnished. He was sentenced to death, his execution serving as a grim reminder of the dangers of dabbling in the forbidden. The witches, too, met their end, hunted down and burned at the stake as the church sought to purge the land of their influence. Godfrey's story became a cautionary tale, a warning to those who would seek power at any cost. As we reflect on Godfrey's downfall, we are reminded of the fragile line between ambition and morality, and the consequences of crossing it. His alliance with the witches reveals the darker side of medieval society, where fear and superstition often dictated the fates of men. And now, as we turn the page, we prepare to uncover yet another dark secret from the annals of knighthood, one that involves deception, betrayal, and the lengths to which one man would go to claim a crown. The next chapter in our journey promises to reveal a knight whose actions would shake the very foundations of power. Now, we shift our focus to a tale of deception and ambition, where the allure of nobility drove one knight to weave a web of lies that would ultimately unravel in spectacular fashion. This is the story of Sir Alaric of Montclair, a man who dared to fabricate his lineage to climb the ranks of medieval society, earning him the infamous title of the knight who faked nobility. Alaric's origins were humble, born to a family of merchants in a small village far from the grandeur of royal courts. Yet, from a young age, he dreamed of a life beyond his station, one filled with the prestige and power reserved for the nobility. Determined to escape his modest beginnings, Alaric crafted an elaborate lie, claiming descent from a long-lost noble house that had supposedly fallen into obscurity. He forged documents, bribed scribes, and even convinced a few local lords to vouch for his fabricated heritage. With his charm and cunning, Alaric managed to secure a position as a knight in the service of a powerful count, where his supposed noble blood opened doors that would have otherwise remained closed. For years, Alaric maintained his ruse with remarkable skill. He adopted the manners and speech of the aristocracy, studied their customs, and even married into a family of minor nobility to solidify his claim. His rise was swift, earning him lands, titles, and the admiration of his peers. But beneath the surface, cracks began to form. Alaric's lack of true noble connections made him vulnerable, and whispers of his questionable lineage started to circulate. To silence his critics, he resorted to increasingly desperate measures, including blackmail and even violence, to protect his secret. The turning point came when a rival knight, suspicious of Alaric's sudden rise, began to investigate his past. This knight uncovered evidence of Alaric's true origins, including testimony from villagers who remembered his family. The revelation sent shockwaves through the court. Alaric's carefully constructed facade crumbled, and he was publicly exposed as a fraud. Stripped of his titles and lands, he was cast out of the nobility and branded a liar. His once illustrious reputation was reduced to ashes, and he became a cautionary tale of the dangers of ambition unchecked by integrity. Alaric's story is a stark reminder of the rigid social hierarchies of medieval Europe, where birthright often determined one's fate. His attempt to defy these boundaries, though bold, ultimately led to his downfall. The consequences of his deception extended beyond his own life, tarnishing the reputations of those who had supported him and sowing distrust within the nobility. His legacy serves as a testament to the perils of deceit and the enduring power of truth. As we leave Alaric's tale behind, we prepare to delve into yet another chapter of intrigue and betrayal, where a knight's actions on the battlefield would reveal a darker side to his valor. The next story promises to uncover the secrets of a man who abandoned his comrades in their hour of need, leaving a trail of questions and consequences in his wake. Now we turn to a tale of cowardice and betrayal that shook the very foundations of medieval honor. This is the story of Sir Godfrey of Blackwood, a knight whose name became synonymous with shame after he abandoned his comrades in their darkest hour, earning him the infamous title of the knight who abandoned the battlefield. Sir Godfrey was once celebrated as a valiant warrior, known for his skill with a sword and his unwavering loyalty to his liege lord. But beneath his polished armor and noble reputation lay a man plagued by fear and doubt. When the call to arms came for a decisive battle against a rival kingdom, Godfrey marched alongside his fellow knights, ready to defend their lands. However, as the clash of steel and the cries of the dying filled the air, something within him snapped. Overwhelmed by the chaos and the sight of so much bloodshed, Godfrey made a fateful decision. He turned his horse and fled, leaving his comrades to face the enemy alone. The consequences of Godfrey's desertion were catastrophic. Without his leadership and the strength of his men, the battle quickly turned against his side. Many brave knights fell, and the enemy gained a decisive victory. The loss was not just in lives but in morale, as the betrayal of one of their own left the survivors questioning the very ideals of chivalry and brotherhood they had sworn to uphold. When news of Godfrey's flight reached his lord, the reaction was swift and merciless. Stripped of his knighthood and titles, he was branded a traitor and a coward. His once proud name was erased from records, and his family disowned him to avoid the stain of his disgrace. Godfrey spent the rest of his days as a fugitive, haunted by the faces of the men he had abandoned and the legacy of shame he had left behind. His story serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of honor and the heavy burden of leadership. In a world where a knight's word was his bond, Godfrey's actions shattered the trust of those who had relied on him, leaving a scar on the collective memory of his people. As we reflect on his downfall, we are reminded that even the bravest among us can falter, and the cost of such failure can echo through history. With this tale of desertion behind us, we now prepare to uncover another layer of medieval intrigue, where love and loyalty collide in a story of betrayal that would shake the very foundations of a kingdom. The next chapter promises to reveal the secrets of a knight who chose love over duty and the devastating consequences that followed. Now, we step into a story where passion and duty collide in a way that would forever alter the course of a kingdom. This is the tale of Sir Alaric of Montclair, a knight whose heart led him down a path of betrayal, earning him the title of the knight who betrayed his king for love. Sir Alaric was a trusted vassal of King Edmund, known for his unwavering loyalty and unmatched skill in battle. But beneath his stoic exterior burned a secret love, a love for Lady Isolde, the king's own betrothed. Their forbidden romance began in the shadows, a dangerous game of stolen glances and whispered promises. As the wedding day approached, Alaric found himself torn between his devotion to his king and the overwhelming pull of his heart. The breaking point came when King Edmund announced his plans to wage war against a neighboring realm, a conflict that would take him far from the castle and leave Isolde vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, Alaric made a fateful choice. He conspired with Isolde to flee the kingdom, abandoning his oath and betraying the trust of the man who had raised him to knighthood. The repercussions were swift and far-reaching. King Edmund, upon discovering the betrayal, declared Alaric a traitor and launched a relentless pursuit. The lovers' flight became the stuff of legend, a desperate chase across forests and mountains, with Alaric using every trick he knew to evade capture. But their love, though fierce, could not outrun the consequences of their actions. In the end, Alaric and Isolde were captured, and the king's wrath was merciless. Alaric was stripped of his title and sentenced to exile, while Isolde was forced into a life of seclusion. Their story, however, did not end there. Over time, their tale of forbidden love and tragic sacrifice spread across the land, inspiring ballads and poems that romanticized their defiance. The political fallout was equally profound. Alaric's betrayal weakened the king's court, sowing seeds of distrust among the nobility. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of placing personal desires above duty. Yet for many, Alaric's story also highlighted the complexities of human emotion, challenging the rigid ideals of chivalry and loyalty that defined the medieval world. As we reflect on Alaric's choices, we are reminded that love, though a powerful force, can lead even the most honorable of knights astray. His story serves as a poignant exploration of the tension between the heart and the sword, a theme that continues to resonate through the ages. With this tale of love and betrayal behind us, we now turn to a story of ambition and deception, where a knight's quest for power would lead him to commit an act so audacious, it would shake the very foundations of the throne. The next chapter promises to reveal the secrets of a knight who dared to steal a crown. Now we journey into a tale of ambition so bold, it defied the very order of the medieval world. This is the story of Sir Godfrey of Blackthorn, a knight whose hunger for power drove him to attempt the unthinkable, the theft of a crown. Sir Godfrey was no ordinary knight. Known for his cunning intellect and silver tongue, he had risen through the ranks of the royal court, earning the favor of King Roland III. But beneath his polished exterior lay a heart consumed by ambition. Godfrey dreamed of a throne that was not his, and he was willing to risk everything to claim it. His plan was as audacious as it was intricate. Using his position as the king's trusted advisor, Godfrey began to sow seeds of discord among the nobility, whispering lies and stoking rivalries to weaken the king's hold on power. He forged alliances with disgruntled lords, promising them wealth and influence in exchange for their support. Meanwhile, he secretly amassed a private army, disguising his troops as mercenaries to avoid suspicion. The final piece of his scheme involved the crown itself. During a grand feast celebrating the king's coronation anniversary, Godfrey planned to steal the royal crown from the treasury. With the crown in his possession, he intended to declare himself the rightful ruler, using his forged alliances and private army to enforce his claim. But as the saying goes, even the best-laid plans can unravel. On the night of the feast, as Godfrey made his way to the treasury, he was betrayed by one of his own allies. A lord who had grown wary of Godfrey's ambition revealed the plot to the king's guards. In a dramatic confrontation, Godfrey was caught red-handed, the crown clutched in his grasp. The fallout was swift and severe. Stripped of his titles and lands, Godfrey was sentenced to life imprisonment in the darkest dungeon of the castle. His private army was disbanded, and his allies were exiled or executed. The kingdom, though shaken, emerged stronger, with King Roland tightening his grip on power and reinforcing the loyalty of his court. Godfrey's story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition. His attempt to steal a crown not only failed but also exposed the fragility of power built on deceit. It became a cautionary tale, a lesson in the consequences of overreaching and the importance of loyalty in a world where trust is the ultimate currency. As we leave the shadow of Godfrey's failed ambition, we prepare to uncover another dark secret, one that involves a knight who turned to the high seas, aligning himself with pirates in a desperate bid for wealth and power. The next chapter promises to reveal the daring exploits of a knight who consorted with outlaws, blurring the line between honor and infamy. From the shadows of a failed coup, we now set sail into uncharted waters, where the line between knightly honor and outright piracy becomes dangerously blurred. This is the tale of Sir Alaric of Windermere, a knight whose desperation for wealth and power led him to forge an unlikely alliance with the most feared pirates of the Mediterranean. Sir Alaric was once a respected figure in the coastal kingdom of Lysandria, known for his prowess in battle and his unwavering loyalty to the crown. but when a series of poor harvests and failed campaigns left him in financial ruin, Alaric found himself at a crossroads. Faced with the prospect of losing his lands and status, he made a decision that would forever tarnish his legacy. Turning to the high seas, Alaric sought out the notorious pirate captain Red Marlowe, whose fleet terrorized trade routes across the Mediterranean. In exchange for a share of the spoils, Alaric offered his military expertise, helping Marlowe plan raids and outmaneuver royal navies. Together, they struck at wealthy merchant ships and coastal towns, amassing a fortune in gold and jewels. But Alaric's alliance with pirates came at a steep cost. His once sterling reputation crumbled as word of his actions spread. Fellow knights and nobles viewed him with a mix of disgust and disbelief, unable to reconcile the image of a noble warrior with that of a common brigand. Even among the pirates, Alaric was seen as an outsider, a man who had abandoned his principles for personal gain. The risks of his new life were immense. Alaric faced constant danger, not only from the royal forces hunting him, but also from the pirates themselves, who were quick to turn on anyone they deemed untrustworthy. In one particularly brutal battle, Alaric narrowly escaped capture after a raid on a heavily guarded port. His ship was sunk, and he was forced to swim to safety, leaving behind much of his ill-gotten wealth. Despite the dangers, Alaric's cunning and skill kept him alive. He became a master of deception, using his knowledge of noble customs to infiltrate high society events and gather intelligence for future raids. Yet, as the years passed, the weight of his choices began to take its toll. Haunted by the betrayal of his knightly vows, Alaric grew increasingly isolated, a man caught between two worlds but belonging to neither. In the end, Alaric's story is one of moral compromise and the high price of ambition. His actions remind us that even the most honorable among us can be tempted by the allure of power and wealth, but such choices often come with consequences that cannot be undone. As we leave the turbulent seas of Alaric's life, we prepare to delve into another dark chapter, one that involves a knight who sought to manipulate faith itself, staging a miracle to gain favor with the church and nobility. The next tale promises to reveal the lengths to which some will go to secure their place in history. From the treacherous waters of piracy, we now step into the realm of divine deception, where faith and ambition collide in a tale of manipulation and false miracles. This is the story of Sir Godfrey of Alderwood, a knight whose desperation for power led him to orchestrate one of the most audacious schemes of his time, a staged miracle designed to win the favor of the church and nobility. Sir Godfrey was a lesser-known knight from the northern lands of Alderwood, a man of modest means but grand aspirations. Frustrated by his lack of influence and recognition, Godfrey devised a plan to elevate his status by exploiting the deep religious fervor of the medieval world. He knew that a miracle, if believed, could grant him the prestige and favor he so desperately sought. With meticulous planning, Godfrey staged an elaborate spectacle. He chose a remote chapel near his estate where he claimed to have witnessed a divine apparition. To lend credibility to his story, he enlisted the help of a local hermit known for his piety to corroborate the event. Godfrey then arranged for a miraculous spring to appear near the chapel, claiming it had healing properties. He even went so far as to plant relics in the area, ensuring that pilgrims would flock to the site. The ruse worked. Word of the miracle spread like wildfire, drawing pilgrims, priests, and even nobles to Alderwood. The church, eager to capitalize on the newfound holy site, declared it a place of divine intervention. Godfrey was hailed as a chosen instrument of God, and his influence grew exponentially. He was granted lands, titles, and the unwavering support of the clergy. But Godfrey's deception could not last forever. Suspicion began to arise when a visiting bishop noticed inconsistencies in the accounts of the miracle. Investigations revealed the staged relics and the fabricated spring. The hermit, burdened by guilt, confessed his role in the scheme. The church, furious at being manipulated, swiftly condemned Godfrey as a heretic and a fraud. The fallout was devastating. Godfrey's lands were seized, his titles stripped, and his reputation irreparably tarnished. He became a pariah, shunned by both the nobility and the common folk who had once revered him. In a final act of penance, the church ordered him to undertake a pilgrimage to atone for his sins, but Godfrey's name would forever be associated with deceit. Sir Godfrey's story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of exploiting faith for personal gain. His actions not only destroyed his own legacy, but also undermined the trust of those who believed in the divine. As we reflect on his downfall, we prepare to uncover yet another dark secret, this time a knight who betrayed his closest ally, a sworn brother in arms. The next tale promises to explore the depths of loyalty and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Now we turn to a tale of broken bonds and shattered trust, where the sacred oath of brotherhood was betrayed for ambition and power. This is the story of Sir Alaric of Blackthorn, a knight whose name became synonymous with treachery after he turned against his closest ally and sworn brother, Sir Cedric of Elmwood. Sir Alaric and Sir Cedric were more than just fellow knights, they were blood brothers, bound by a sacred oath of loyalty and mutual protection. They had fought side by side in countless battles, their trust in one another unshakable. But beneath the surface of their camaraderie, Alaric harbored a growing resentment. Cedric, though younger, had risen swiftly through the ranks, earning the favor of their lord and the admiration of their peers. Alaric, despite his experience and skill, felt overshadowed and overlooked. The breaking point came when their lord announced his intention to name Cedric as his heir, bypassing Alaric entirely. Consumed by jealousy and a desire for recognition, Alaric began to plot his revenge. He secretly allied with a rival lord, promising to deliver crucial information about their defenses in exchange for a position of power in the rival's court. In a cold and calculated move, Alaric betrayed Cedric during a critical battle, leading their forces into a trap that left Cedric gravely wounded and their lord's army decimated. The betrayal sent shockwaves through the kingdom. Cedric, though he survived, was left permanently scarred both physically and emotionally. The bond they had once shared was irreparably broken, and Cedric publicly denounced Alaric as a traitor. The political fallout was severe. Alaric's actions destabilized the region, sparking a bitter feud between the two lords that lasted for years. Alaric, now branded a turncoat, found himself isolated and despised even by those who had initially supported his ambitions. Alaric's legacy became one of infamy. Songs and tales of his betrayal spread far and wide, serving as a cautionary reminder of the consequences of breaking sacred oaths. His name became a byword for treachery, and his once proud lineage was tarnished forever. Though he gained the power he sought, it came at the cost of his honor, his brother, and his place in history. As we reflect on Alaric's story, we are reminded of the fragility of trust and the devastating impact of betrayal. But the shadows of the medieval world hold even more secrets, and our next tale takes us to the life of a knight who abandoned his noble duties for profit, becoming a sellsword in a world where loyalty was bought and sold. Stay with us as we uncover the story of the knight who sold his sword. Now we step into the life of a man who traded honor for gold, a knight who chose the clink of coins over the clang of chivalry. This is the story of Sir Roland of Greystone, a once respected noble who abandoned his vows to become a sellsword, a mercenary who fought not for glory or duty but for the highest bidder. Sir Roland began his career as a shining example of knighthood, sworn to protect the weak and uphold justice. But as the years passed, the harsh realities of medieval life began to wear on him. The constant wars, the political intrigues, and the endless demands of his lord left him disillusioned. He grew tired of fighting for causes he no longer believed in, and the promise of wealth began to overshadow his sense of duty. The turning point came when Roland was offered a substantial sum by a wealthy merchant to protect a caravan from bandits. The job was simple, the pay was generous, and for the first time, Roland felt the allure of working for himself rather than for a lord or a cause. He accepted the offer and thus began his descent into the life of a sellsword. As a mercenary, Roland fought in countless battles, but his motivations were no longer rooted in honor or loyalty. He took on jobs for anyone willing to pay, regardless of their morality or the cause they represented. He fought for rival lords, raided villages, and even participated in the sacking of a monastery, all for the promise of gold. Each job chipped away at his conscience, but Roland justified his actions by telling himself that survival in a brutal world required compromise. Society, however, did not view Roland kindly. Once celebrated as a paragon of virtue, he was now seen as a disgrace to the knightly order. His former peers shunned him, and the common folk who had once looked up to him now whispered his name with disdain. Songs and stories began to circulate, painting him as a cautionary tale of greed and moral decay. Even those who hired him did so with reluctance, knowing that a man who sold his sword could just as easily turn it against them. Despite the scorn, Roland found a strange sense of freedom in his new life. He no longer answered to anyone but himself, and the wealth he amassed allowed him to live in comfort. But this comfort came at a cost. The friendships he had once cherished were gone, replaced by a life of isolation. The respect he had earned as a knight was lost, and in its place was a reputation as a man who could not be trusted. Roland's story serves as a stark reminder of the moral dilemmas faced by those who lived by the sword. It raises questions about the true cost of abandoning one's principles and the price of trading honor for profit. As we leave Roland's tale behind, we turn to another knight whose choices were equally controversial, a man who faked a heroic quest to gain fame and fortune. Stay with us as we uncover the story of the knight who fabricated his legacy. Now we journey into the tale of a knight whose legacy was built on lies, a man who spun a web of deceit to craft a reputation he never truly earned. This is the story of Sir Alaric of Blackwood, a knight who faked a heroic quest to secure fame and fortune, only to see his carefully constructed facade crumble under the weight of his own deception. Sir Alaric was a knight of modest standing, overshadowed by more renowned warriors in his time. Frustrated by his lack of recognition and driven by a hunger for glory, he devised a plan to elevate his status. He claimed to have undertaken a perilous quest to slay a fearsome dragon that had terrorized a distant village. According to his tale, he battled the beast for days, emerging victorious and saving the villagers from certain doom. The story spread like wildfire, and Alaric was hailed as a hero, his name celebrated in songs and stories across the land. To maintain the illusion, Alaric went to great lengths. He forged evidence of the dragon's existence, presenting charred bones and scales he claimed to have taken from the creature. He even paid actors to pose as grateful villagers who traveled far and wide to sing his praises. For a time, his ruse worked flawlessly. Lords and ladies sought his counsel, and he was showered with gifts and titles. But the truth, as it often does, began to unravel. Whispers of doubt started to circulate. Some questioned why no one had seen the dragon before Alaric's supposed victory. Others pointed out inconsistencies in his story. The final blow came when a traveling merchant who had passed through the village Alaric claimed to have saved revealed that no such dragon had ever existed. The villagers, when questioned, admitted they had been paid to play their part in the charade. The fallout was swift and devastating. Alaric's name, once synonymous with heroism, became a byword for deceit. The lords who had honored him stripped him of his titles, and the songs that once praised him now mocked his downfall. Even his fellow knights who had once respected him turned their backs on him. Alaric's reputation was irreparably tarnished, and he spent the rest of his days in obscurity, a cautionary tale of the dangers of vanity and dishonesty. Alaric's story serves as a reminder of the fragile nature of reputation and the high cost of deception. It challenges us to consider the lengths to which people will go for fame and the consequences when their lies are exposed. As we leave Alaric's tale behind, we turn to the final knight in our series, a man whose darkest secrets were only revealed after his death. Stay with us as we uncover the story of the knight who died in disgrace. As we step into the final chapter of our journey, we encounter a knight whose life was shrouded in mystery, a man whose darkest deeds remained hidden until the very end. This is the tale of Sir Godfrey of Eldermere, a knight whose legacy was forever tarnished when the truth about his actions came to light after his death. His story serves as a chilling reminder that even in the grave, secrets have a way of surfacing. Sir Godfrey was once celebrated as a paragon of chivalry, a knight whose bravery and loyalty were beyond reproach. He served his lord with unwavering dedication, earning the respect of his peers and the admiration of the common folk. But beneath the polished armor and noble demeanor lay a man burdened by a web of deceit. Godfrey had spent years engaging in acts of betrayal, extortion, and even murder, all while maintaining the facade of a virtuous knight. His crimes were carefully concealed, and for decades no one suspected the truth. It was only after Godfrey's death that the cracks in his carefully constructed image began to show. A servant tasked with sorting through his belongings discovered a hidden compartment in his study. Inside were letters, ledgers, and other documents that detailed Godfrey's illicit activities. The evidence revealed that he had conspired with rival lords to undermine his own liege, accepted bribes to sway the outcomes of trials, and even orchestrated the deaths of those who stood in his way. The revelation sent shockwaves through the kingdom, leaving those who had once revered him reeling in disbelief. The impact on Godfrey's legacy was immediate and devastating. The lords who had trusted him felt betrayed, and the common people who had looked up to him felt a deep sense of disillusionment. His name, once spoken with reverence, became synonymous with treachery. Monuments erected in his honor were torn down, and his family, though innocent of his crimes, bore the weight of his disgrace. The once great knight was reduced to a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and moral corruption. Godfrey's story forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even those who appear noble can harbor dark secrets. It challenges us to question the stories we are told and to consider the complexities of human nature. As we close this chapter on Sir Godfrey of Eldermere, we reflect on the lessons his life and downfall teach us about integrity, accountability, and the enduring consequences of our actions. And with that, we conclude our exploration of 30 medieval knights and their darkest secrets. Each story has revealed the shadows that lurked behind the shining armor of chivalry, reminding us that history is often more complex than it appears. Which knight's tale resonated with you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more journeys into the mysteries of the past. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stories that shape our world. As we bring this journey to a close, let us take a moment to reflect on the 30 knights whose stories have unveiled the hidden shadows of medieval chivalry. From the treacherous betrayals of Sir Godfrey of Eldermere to the forbidden loves, secret sorcery, and ruthless ambitions of others, each tale has peeled back the layers of honor and duty to reveal the darker truths beneath. These knights, once celebrated as paragons of virtue, remind us that history is rarely as simple as it seems. Their actions, whether driven by greed, love, or desperation, paint a vivid picture of the moral complexities that defined their era. Through their stories, we've explored the fragile balance between power and morality, the consequences of unchecked ambition, and the enduring impact of choices made in the shadows. These knights were not just heroes or villains, they were human beings shaped by the pressures of their time, grappling with the same struggles of loyalty, desire, and survival that we face today. Their lives serve as a mirror, reflecting the timeless truths about human nature and the cost of compromising one's principles. As we leave these tales behind, we invite you to share your thoughts. Which knight's story resonated with you the most? Was it the tragic lover, the secret sorcerer, or the knight who dared to defy his own king? Let us know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this journey into the mysteries of the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more captivating stories from history. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember the past is always closer than it seems.